Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you in partnership with my friends over at Kona. Those of you that have been listening to the show for a long time know that I am a huge fan of the remote work movement. However, I also recognize it comes with some challenges. One of those challenges that plagues many remote teams is employee burnout or employee dissatisfaction with their jobs. This is really hard to monitor as a leader when your teammates are not sitting face to face with you in an office anymore. But that's what Kona was built to tackle, and they've done a phenomenal job. The co-founders over there are friends and people who have truly built something to help people and help remote workers more specifically. So I love what they're doing. It makes a huge impact for their customers, and I'm excited to partner with them here. You can find out more and get 15% off your team subscription by going to the link in the show notes and using the code CHASE at checkout. Feel free to ask me any questions. I highly recommend this product and am excited to hear what the About Abroad community thinks. Check out the link in the show notes and use the code CHASE at checkout to get 15% off your subscription. My guest today is my friend Cara, who joins me from sunny Spain, but she's originally from Germany. And as many of you might know, I just spent almost a year in Germany after living for nearly 5 years in Spain. So we wanted to dive into some of the fun differences between two amazing European countries, talk about some of Cara's experiences raising a family in southern Spain in Andalusia, one of the most beautiful and popular places to go and one of the most beautiful and popular countries in the world, and talk about some of the surprises that maybe you don't think of when you're thinking about moving abroad. Cara also works at a company called WorkFlex that's doing some really cool things in the workation, future of workspace. So we dove into a bit of that as well. A lot of the things that we love to talk about all wrapped up into one episode here on About Abroad. So I think you all will enjoy this one. Please help me in welcoming Cara to About Abroad. Yeah, so you guys are about to go on a little holiday vacation there you're based in Seville, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm based in Seville.
Okay, so where does one go on vacation from Seville, one of the most visited countries or visited cities in one of the most visited countries in the world?
Yeah, so I have two kids, or we have two kids, 3 and 4, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take the car and do a 1-hour drive and go to a hotel close to the beach, totally relax with gym, with good food, and a kids club where we can, leave the kids for a little while. And that's mainly going to be our plan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is one of the many benefits of living in the south of Spain, right? Like you drive 1 hour, you're first of all, you're in an amazing city in Seville, and then you drive an hour and you're along some of the most beautiful coastline that you can possibly find.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so my mother-in-law, she has an apartment at the beach, which is like an hour drive away. So we use that every weekend. And but only since I have kids, I really appreciate it a lot more. You know, how sometimes also when you have something, you don't really appreciate it. So every time I wanted to go on holiday, I wanted to go Dubai, or maybe I want to go to the States, or maybe I want to go to Paris. And then I realized, I have everything, next door, and why not use it? So it's going to be the first time actually we're going to do a longer holiday close by, but usually we use it, during the weekend as well.
Sounds amazing. Where is the closest beach from Seville? Because Seville's not I think a lot of people actually think that it's a coastal city, and it's not. It's a little bit inland. I don't know if you found that, but
it's around an hour drive. So the closest by probably everyone knows is Cadiz, and then, it's around 2-hour drive to Malaga, because I also know that a lot of people know Malaga. But it's true. It doesn't have the beach right next door, but an hour drive away, which I think is also fine.
Yeah, it's super nice, and Cadiz is amazing. Like that's an underrated place. I think maybe off the radar still for a lot of like non-Spanish people, but one of the coolest coastal towns in Spain, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. It's beautiful. Although I have to say, like over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot more tourists coming into Andalusia. And typically what they do is do like sort of a, trip around Andalusia. So like Seville, Malaga, Marbella, Granada, because it has so much diversity, right? So I also think that a lot of people don't know that there's also, the possibility to ski in south of Spain, close to Granada. So that's usually what a lot of tourists do, is just do a route through Andalusia. But there's really some great places, I have to say. Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, that was totally mind blowing to me when I first moved to Spain. I came to Andalusia also. Like, I came on a 3-month tourist visa, kind of scouting it out. And I didn't know that you could go skiing there in the Sierra Nevada. Like, you could be sitting up there in the mountains, like looking across the Mediterranean at Africa, see Africa from these mountains, and an hour later be like surfing on the Costa del Sol. Like, I can't quite comprehend all of the possibilities here.
Yeah, totally true. Totally true.
Was this attractive for you? Like, is there, I know if I understand correctly, your husband's Spanish, but like, were you pulled to Spain? Or was that like, it just happened because of the relationship?
Yeah, so I think a bit of both. And I also remember I said to myself, I'm not going to move just for my husband to a country, because I'm definitely then not going to be happy long term there, because you do it for somebody else. I think you also have to be like happy to do your move yourself. But certainly, like, so I did my semester abroad in Seville, decided not to fall in love, but then I did. Like, it you know and then actually we were like quite some years a distance relationship, and then we actually moved together to Germany for a couple of years as well, so like 5 years. And then then it was more sort of my husband saying, I struggle a little bit with the German winter and the German culture at some point, because in Seville it's all about being on the street, socializing, good weather, beach close by. So it's definitely a different. And then I said, yeah, okay, let's give it a try. I think back then I had a little bit of a struggle, because I had to change jobs. So back then I was working at a very big employer, which was Unilever. I had like the greatest position ever, doing marketing, cool brands. I was living my life in terms of work. And I had to really, make some cuts there when I moved to Seville. But I think for me, it was still a good move to do, because it's a perfect mixture now of work and life balance, like you always like to call it. And I'm really enjoying it.
How long have you been there?
I've been here now for 7 years.
Okay. Yeah, so you're deeply settled in now. This isn't like a 1-2 year little adventure where the luster and novelty could have, or maybe has, worn off, and it's just like real life now.
Yeah, totally. And like a couple of weeks ago, I was counting how many years I've already lived abroad, and I already make like 10 years, so a decade, which is also like, wow. I've actually lived almost a third of my life, so now you can calculate how old I am, more or less, but abroad. And it's crazy, right? But I was always the kind of person that liked to, adapt to different cultures, live in different cultures. First time I went abroad was when I was 16. So I went to New Zealand, which was like very far away. And I remember, so an agency organized this, how it's typical students agency organizer that people go abroad. And I remember we did like sort of a workshop before we went abroad with the parents and the kids. And you would talk about, what are you afraid of when you're going to move abroad? And they would split up the parents and the kids. So they would ask the parents, what are you afraid of your kid going abroad? And I remember after the workshop, my dad told me that, and he said, well, a lot of parents were scared that the people are not going to like it, the kids are not going to like it, they're going to miss home. And I think I was the only one that said, oh, I'm afraid she's not going to come back. She's definitely going to like it, because she's always like traveling. I love traveling. That's just always been me, sort of like far away from Germany, still connected to Germany, but still enjoying a lot more the life abroad than really in my home country, to be honest.
We have so many things in, like, as we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last year or so, I always find we have like lots of little things in common. And so that is one more that I think is kind of funny. Like, I didn't go abroad until I was 18. And the first place I went was technically New Zealand, because I went with an organized trip to Australia and had a like 5 hour layover in Auckland. So the first place I ever touched down outside the US was in Auckland. I didn't see any of Auckland. I can't say I've been to New Zealand, but I did. I stopped in New Zealand on my way to Australia and spent my first month abroad there, and it was life-changing, right? Like, and I think I also like had that in me. I'd already like written in my like journal and, you know, things like I'm going to spend lots of time abroad, and like made some other sacrifices, I think, to make it a possibility, because I just knew it was like, this is going to be a core part of this next chapter of life.
Yeah, totally, totally. How did you know that? And it was going to be Spain in the end.
It was really funny. Like, I came to Spain the first time on a 3 month, just like a 90-day tourist visa. And, you know, like random series of events, but just kind of like, we're going to start in Spain. We were doing like a year to 2 year kind of like travel thing, and started our European journey in Spain, and just landed there in the Costa del Sol and was like, this is where you go when you arrive in Spain. So that's what we did. And then, but ended up like, that was a short stint, ended up like a year or two later finding, as Americans, it's really hard to stay in Europe, or it was for a long time, beyond 90 days. And Spain had this visa, the non-lucrative visa, which I know you're familiar with, that applied to me at the time because of my work at Doist. So that's really why it wasn't like necessarily dying to get to Spain. It was more like dying to get to Europe, and Spain offered the entryway. And we also liked Spain already. We spoke a little bit of Spanish, wanted to learn more. So it all kind of like made sense. But I thought it was going to be a short stay. Like, I thought we might be there 1 year. Now it's been 5 years. So I've kind of fallen in love with the country.
Yeah, but I think that's also a good approach to see it, right? Because sometimes I also think people think if I go to live abroad, then I'll stay there the rest of my life, or at least I have to stay minimum 3 years, because otherwise it's not worth it. And I think that's really dangerous if you have that sort of mindset, because I also said when I moved to Spain, although it was with my husband, obviously, I said, well, just go for 3-4 years and then he's happy again and then we're going to come back. Well, that never happened. But even now I'm saying, hey, it could happen that maybe in a year or so we'll just move back for a couple of years to Germany, right? So what I really enjoy also is having the flexibility of, you know, deciding where you want to be. And I don't like to be like a permanent a family in Spain, but really have the flexibility to do so. And I think one important point there is actually the job, obviously. So obviously you have to have a job which also gives you the flexibility. But I think it's really important to still know, hey, and if it doesn't work out, you can still go back, or there's other places that you might want to go, right?
Yeah, I like thinking about it in terms of like chapters. Like, this is this chapter of life right now. And like, I've temporarily left Spain for the last year, and I'm traveling around a little bit, checking out some new places. And like, people will ask me like, oh, are you moving here? You know, and I'm like, not, you know, I'm not committing to anything right now. I'm in an exploration phase, but I've really enjoyed my time in Spain. People ask that also, like, oh, are you done with Spain? It's like, no, I'm just at this chapter, I'm doing a little bit of exploring, but you know, I think we should like leave that. Like, we have a lot of flexibility and options now. It's okay to embrace that. I think sometimes we're still a bit unsure how to embrace that freedom, which I struggle with as well. So I totally get it.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I mean, we just bought, for example, we just bought an apartment, and that's where, you know, my family was saying, so you're going to stay there forever? I said, no, but I mean, my kids were born here. Part of my family's here. My friends are here. So Seville's definitely still always going to be part of my life. So, you know, and you can also rent afterwards. But yeah, that was sort of a sign for them. Okay, Cara's not going to come back anymore.
What as a I think it's really funny. We could probably have some fun with this. So like Germany and Spain are geographically speaking relatively close. They're both EU countries, same time zone. Like you can drive from one to the other if you need to. There's obviously flights and stuff between, but culturally they're very very different places. And like you as a German that's lived abroad for a decade now, and has now spent a good percentage of that time in Spain. Me as an American that has been living in Spain for 5 years and just spent almost a year in Germany. I feel like there are some stereotypical things that are true and untrue, and there are some things that like totally might catch someone off guard. And I don't know, like what for you, I guess, as a German living in Spain, like what are some things I guess that like jump out to you as being like starkly different between the two?
I think the main difference is really how Spaniards perceive life, right? So I still think there's a big difference in terms of how Germans perceive also their work life and how Spaniards receive their work life. Doesn't mean that Spaniards are lazy and they don't work. Yes, they do work a lot, but if you meet somebody here, a friend of a friend or whatever, you're not going to ask them first place what they do, their job. So you're going to straight away, talk about other things, not politics either, but you're going to talk about other things and just get to know that person. Whereas when I go to Germany, straight like second question is, so what do you do for a living? Oh, I do this. So this is definitely something that still surprises me at some point. And I also think that's what people think it is, and I think that's really true. Um, and then what I also think is a lot different in Spain is, the way you perceive family. So obviously it's big families, but they're all from, at least it's from my husband's part. It's a big family. My mother-in-law has had 7 sisters and brothers. My father-in-law has 7 sisters and brothers. So you can imagine, I think my husband has like 50 cousins. Um, it's like crazy. But family is really, the top priority no matter what. And that is something that I really enjoy. So my parents are separated. I think almost all of my aunts and my grandmother all separated, couples, unfortunately. So this is something that I really enjoy, that you really have a family. You have big birthday parties, you have big Christmases. And that is something that has a really high priority in Spain.
Mm, yeah, that is, I think that's largely an amazing pro, especially for someone in your position. Like, you've got that like family safety net in place by default. I've talked to some people. I have an American friend who's married to a Spanish. His wife is Spanish, and he gets a little overwhelmed by it. It's like a little much for him. Sometimes like, he's like, yeah, like, ask him, hey, do you want to meet up this weekend on Sunday? No, we can't. Sunday's family day. It's paella in the park, and we do that every single Sunday for the last 22 years, and he's like, God, and maybe a bit excessive there, but it can be, I think it's worth acknowledging, like for some people, it could be a little much.
Yeah, and that's true. So, and I think it's also an important thing when you adapt to a culture. You might adapt, but it doesn't mean that you have to change your entire schedule. And so I think it's also very important. At least that's what we try to do. We try to live a German Spanish culture at home. Um, so a couple of things that I value a lot that are very important for me in terms of cultural we'll just do at home, although we live in Spain, like the Easter bunny comes, just, or we have breakfast all together during the weekend, which is something that Spanish people don't do. They don't even have breakfast. Like they just have a coffee and maybe a tostada, and that's it. Off you go. So I think it's also important that you sort of, especially with a family with 2 different cultures, that you sort of find your compromise or find your own culture, what you're happy with. because otherwise you're definitely not going to be happy if you have to be with a family every Sunday at the paella and you feel like doing something else.
Absolutely. Something else that like that I think kind of related to that. You mentioned the approach to work, and that was really good for me. I mean, I think Germans and Americans, we're into that like class of cultures where work is like a very big part of our identity, and we talk about it a lot. We focus on it a lot. We take a lot less time off generally, and so moving to a place like Spain was like good for me, and like it relaxed me. It taught me that you can still have a great life and probably even a better life without focusing so much on just like this one spoke of the wheel. And I don't know if that like was a positive thing for you that like actually changed you, or if it was more like, oh, this is just the culture that I'm in now. But that's been like tangibly impactful for me.
No, totally. I would sign that. It's a good mixture. So when I moved to Seville, I started working at a family-owned Spanish company, big company as well. So also like 2,000 employees, 400 million in revenue. And it had a very old-fashioned culture. So it was like in the 90s, the more you work, the better you are. Uh, Whoever gets up and goes home first doesn't work. So that was a real cultural shock for me, because I came from a huge employer, really flexible sort of working environment. But then I was really surprised because then I mean they have a good mixture, because when they're out of work, then they're really out of work, right? Where I think sometimes in Germany, or maybe also in the US, you might agree, you have people only worrying about work, and it's only work, and that's where I want to be successful, that's where I'm going to be happy, and that's it. And here I think they have a really good mixture between, hey, it's work, and if I'm not happy at work, doesn't matter, because I have my family, I can enjoy life, I can go to the beach. And that really, I had to learn how to do that, because I came from like 60 hours of work a week and I want to be successful, to nobody talks about work here. It's like, I don't even know what this guy does. Is he a lawyer, or is he a doctor, or And I think that's really good. I think that's really a good mixture. But I certainly had to learn it,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. Hey everyone, I am so excited to announce a new partnership with International Living. They are one of the leading organizations in the world helping people move abroad. And I actually got my start moving abroad via International Living when they inspired me to move to Ecuador many years ago. Long story for another day, but I will be teaching a course with the International Living team about moving to Spain, talking about some of the visa options available, and a little bit about why I have chosen to call this country home of all the places in the world. So you can learn more via the link in the show notes and get a specialized discount only available through the About Abroad affiliate link there in the show notes. Go and check it out, sign up, and I hope to see you there. If you've made it this far into the episode and you're still enjoying yourself, then I would love to ask a quick favor. Open up the app that you're using to listen to this podcast and leave a quick review. You can do this in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and really just about any platform that allows podcast listening now. If you can't find that in the interface of the app, then scroll down in the show notes and find ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, and you should be able to leave it from there. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it and hope you enjoy the rest of the show. I was wondering, how do you speak to the kids at home? Is it a mixture of languages?
Yeah, so my husband speaks Spanish with them, and I speak German. They're also so here. Luckily, we don't have daycare issues like you would have in Germany. I don't know if you've seen it also, but my LinkedIn is also full of posts about that the government is going to cut the money for parents who earn above 150K. So here, luckily, we don't have so much help from the government, but at least we have daycare. So it's not like you have to sign up for daycare once you're pregnant. That's not a problem. And obviously, they're at daycare and they speak Spanish there. But now, from 4 years old, they're going to also go to the German kindergarten and the German school. Um, Yeah, which was also quite fun because a lot of people said, well, why are you going to take them to the private German school? It's very expensive, and you're going to speak German to them anyway, so they're going to be able to speak. And there we go back to the culture, right? Because for me, it's more a cultural thing. Because there they'll show them, what other typical cultural festives there are in Germany. There's exchanges. You can be able to study in Germany once you finish school there. So, and that was, for example, a really, really important point for me. I want my kids to really take advantage of that. They have a German mother and a Spanish father to speak both languages perfectly, and also to know both cultures, right? And have that adaptability from the beginning, because I also think that's something that some people here, especially in Andalusia, lack in. They're in Seville. When they go on holiday, they go 1 hour drive to the beach. Every summer, the same thing. So they haven't really seen other cultures. And I think you miss out on it if you don't visit other countries, like also in your personal development. And that's something definitely I want to, give to my kids, that they have the opportunity to see everything that they want and be able to live in that culture that in the end they prefer. And it might be New Zealand, or I don't know.
I'm sure mom would love that, right? The tables have turned. Like all of a sudden you're the mom. You're like, no, don't go to New Zealand. I don't want you to love it there. You touched on so many things there that are interesting to me. At first, I do think it's like such a superpower and advantage if you come from a multilingual household to just have that baked into your life, that learning multiple languages is just, given to you basically. So I think that's like such an advantage. And so very cool that you guys are intentional about that. The other thing, like,
so
no.
I get myself a lot of times, because they understand when I speak German to them, but they would understand a lot better if I would yell at them in Spanish. So sometimes I just have to, tell myself, have patience, explain it in German. They'll need to learn. So sometimes I also, catch myself speaking Spanish a little bit to them. But in the end, they get it. They know that they're learning two languages. And the other one, even when we are in Germany for 2 weeks, she speaks entire sentences, which is great, like speaks to my mother, to my father, to my brother. And they get it. But it takes a little bit of patience as well, and consistency.
I get so pissed at these kids, man. I tell you, because I just spent 10 months in Germany and like I can barely do some sentences. And I'm like, I see 2-year-olds picking it up in no time. I'm like, God, what's wrong with me?
How's your German going?
It's terrible. I mean, I don't even say I speak German. Like I took a pretty lackadaisical approach to it while I was there. I took 2 semesters of German in college because I did my study abroad in Austria. So I did like a basic like intro to German for that experience. And, but that was a really long time ago, but there's some stuff back there, like basic ordering food, counting,
You can
like if I have to, yeah, I can survive. But like, I don't like, I'm not going to build any relationships in German. And so anyway, I went in with huge intentions, like we all do, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm going to get here. I was going to sign up for intensive courses, and I bought. I love this Coffee Break Spanish, Coffee Break German, this podcast that gives you courses and homework and stuff. And so I went all in on that, and like totally burned out after like 2 months. I just had too much on my plate. So kind of neglected it, which is really hard to do when you're like, like quote unquote dedicated to this for myself, not for anybody else, and kind of let yourself down. But it's fun. I just try to have fun with it.
Yeah. And also German's not easy. Yeah. So probably not starting with the easiest language, to be totally honest. I guess with Spanish, it's a little bit easier, no?
Yeah, totally. I think Spanish, although like some of this, I think German is misunderstood to be much more difficult than it is. Like I think people hear it and they think it must be so drastically different, but there's a lot of cognate words that are like very similar to English words. And actually some of the sentence structure flows more similarly than in Spanish. So some of it actually, after learning Spanish, I felt like, oh, actually German is kind of coming to me a little bit easier than I would have expected. But no, it's not the easiest language to learn for sure as a foreigner. And also, you guys speak such good English. Like it's so cliche to say, but like, yeah, it was just like very easy to just be like, let's just do English. Let's not struggle through this.
Things that don't happen here in Seville. So the general, English skills are not very good. But yeah, I really struggled with Spanish with the pronunciation because I couldn't roll the R. I was always saying like gracias, and it sounded so German. And it's funny because my mother, she sings, so she's a music teacher, and I ask her because she also sings sometimes, opera songs, or used to sing. I don't think she sings it anymore. She's going to listen now. She's going to say, "What the hell did you say that on the podcast?" But I know that she can roll the R, so I just asked her. Said, well, you just have to say DT, DT, DT very quickly, one after another. And then all of a sudden it happened. I was so proud I would finally roll the R and say gracias instead of
Gracias.
that's the thing I most struggle with Spanish, like the pronunciation.
Yeah, it takes some time, and it also really inhibits you in a lot of ways. Like some people, even if you catch on to languages very quickly, it's still like it's such a core part of how we do things day to day, and it can really prohibit a lot of things. Not just like getting the obvious thing done where you're forced to speak another language and you can, and it just doesn't happen, but like building relationships, having humor. There's little things like that like collectively really kind of affect the abroad experience.
Do you have also then Spanish friends then in Valencia where you live?
Yeah, I do. Like people will often ask me like, I don't know if this happens to you when you go home, but when I go back to the US, I get asked a lot like, oh, you must be fluent in Spanish. And I'm like, I don't know exactly what fluent means, because I feel totally comfortable in Spanish, but there's a lot of things I don't know how to say. There's words that I'll pop up and be like, I've never heard that before. Or there's a sentence structure that I just don't use or whatever. So, but that's how I define it. I'm like, look, I have friends that don't speak English, and they're like real friends. So I don't know where that puts me on the fluency spectrum, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, totally. No, I get you. So I think I speak Spanish with my husband, so I can have relationships in Spanish. That's what I always say. But for example, watching a movie in Spanish is like too exhausting for me. I couldn't relax because I'd be all the time full pressure and tension. And it's a lot different also because here they have a lot of dialect, the Andaluz. And so you could say, yeah, fluent, what does it really mean, right? So you can have friendships, I can have a good marriage, and that's
it's working on some level. Yeah, something else you touched on earlier, which I think is worth pointing out, because Spain is a very popular country, especially like they're it's one of the most visited countries in the world. It's popular for a lot of reasons. They've just introduced the digital nomad visa, which a lot of people that listen to this show are interested in. But something you mentioned earlier that I think is something I hear popped up amongst other expats, and I know started to sort of have an effect on my wife and I after spending 5 years there. And there is, and I don't know, like we can cut it out if you're like, dude, I can't say that, I'm married to a Spaniard, but like there is a bit of a closed-mindedness sometimes, like Spain is the world in a way or something like that. And it's not explicit. It's not like people say that necessarily, but like you touched on, like things are done in a very like Spanish way. And and there's like a feeling that like you can do everything in Spain because there are amazing mountains and amazing oceans and you have like different cultures and dialects and languages. And so there is a lot to see and do there. But one of the reasons that we kind of wanted to leave after a while and go, for example, live in Germany for a year was because we were kind of craving the like multiculturalness of Central Europe, where there are countries with different languages right up next to each other, and people do travel a lot and value those intercultural changes, and not like, there is just this one way to do things. And so I have no idea, like maybe I'm off base, maybe you haven't experienced that, but I picked up on a little bit of that and something you said earlier and wondered if you had any perspective.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's totally what you say. So like I said, right, Spanish people love their country, they love their culture, they love their food also. So it gets very repetitive. And that's one point, certainly, I would totally agree with you, which can get a little bit boring for people like us who like, to see new things, travel, different cultures, different food. I'm dying to go to a good Italian. There's no good Italian in Spain. And to be totally fair with you and totally honest, I had a point where I said, this pisses me off here. Like, it's all Spanish. Um, the way I work around it is that I just, travel. So we try to travel to different countries. I try to go home to my parents also every now and then, take the kids with me, or we go, the four of us. Because I need that. I need a little bit of international, multinational, surrounding, because otherwise it would become too Spanish for me. I totally agree with you. Totally.
Okay, good. I'm kind of glad I'm not alone, like in that, because you feel a little bit spoiled when you're like, I'm living in this amazing place, but this is kind of starting to piss me off a little bit. Like,
Yeah, it sounds strange, right? But I think that's also what I mentioned before with the adaptability and the mindset. Like, you can adapt to a certain culture, but I think once it is out of your values, and with one of your values is that you want to, have diversity in your life, and you want to learn things and see things and grow, then I think you have to do something about it, to be actually long-term happy abroad. And we also have like a German sort of community here. I've just joined them. Well, after 7 years I'm here, I've just joined them. But I mean, it's good, to connect with others that have the same sort of, cultural background. And because in the end, you're American, you're always going to be American. I'm German, I'm always going to be a German. And there is certain things that you just don't want to change, right? You always want to have them in your life. So yeah, and that's why I'm also very happy with my job at the moment, because I can, I can work from anywhere where I want to. So I could, pick my laptop and just go 3 months to Germany, or I go to US or whatever. And I didn't have that flexibility when I was at my old employer, the Spanish employer. So I think I've taken a step forward in that sense. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It can sound a little bit arrogant, right? If you're in a beautiful place and then you say, yeah, but it's not all rosy, not all great.
Yeah, but it's totally fair too, because like I think food is a good example here. So I'll tell you a kind of funny story about being in Spain. But like, I've talked to people who lived in Japan, and they're like, dude, I'm obsessed with Japanese food, but like I can't do sushi anymore. I'm living in Mexico, like I can't go do fajitas and tacos every day. Like I need something different. And it was really funny. We were there in Valencia, and about my wife and I had already been having this conversation about the food. We kept going to like Spanish restaurants, and it's like the exact same menu at every single restaurant, like the same 10 tapas. And we were already kind of like having this conversation, and we sat down with a Spanish friend who asked the waiter, like, do you, like, obviously in Spanish, like, do you have patatas bravas? And my wife just kind of like flipped her shit a little bit and was just like, of course they have patatas bravas. They have, you don't even have to ask. They have patatas bravas. And like, he didn't understand. He was like, why did that make you mad? But we had literally just been having the conversation, how it's like, yeah, they're going to have patatas bravas. They're going to have Russian salad. They're going to have, the jamon and whatever. And it was hilarious. So anyway, it's fun. Like, you got to have fun with these things, I think, when you live abroad, because there will be things that you didn't even realize will annoy you, and they just will at some point.
Totally. And same as, for example, I get tired sometimes of tapas, because then you have to share, right? And I got sort of into the mood that I don't want to share my food, because then it's typically the plates in the middle, and then you don't know if I pick 2 now or 3, is that too much, or should I only pick 1? Or if there's 1 left, am I allowed to take it? So what I usually look forward to when I go to Germany is have my own plate, and nobody's going to put their fork into it, and just my plate. And then I also know what I eat, and I'm not just, sharing tapas all the time with everybody.
That is 100% true. It's like there's this like math going on in your head. Like, the Spanish are not doing that math. They're not looking at they're not counting how many patatas bravas you had. But in my head, I'm like, I've had 3 and there's 12 and there's 4 people. I'm like thinking that I've got to like do this equitably. And it comes back to the way they approach life. It's like, it's not that way. And it's as core as that. Like they don't, they're not doing the math to make sure that everything's equally done. It's like, just muy tranquilo, and like, just go about it however they want. And I love that.
Yeah, totally. No, I totally agree.
What do you miss about Germany? Because I have some things on my mind that I really came to love about Germany, especially in comparison to Spain. And so I can share those with you if you want. But I'm curious from your perspective, like, what do you miss about home?
So obviously it would be, family and friends. I think that's very obvious. I think because Seville is so Spanish, not like Madrid and Barcelona, maybe, sort of the international lifestyle. And I sometimes feel here in Seville that a little bit behind things, like when it comes to technology. I also thought that when I was the other employee, when it came to the job. So I feel like a little bit like I'm 10, 15 years behind. And that sometimes annoys me a little bit because I feel like I'm missing out. And when I come to Germany and I see all those e-cars and I don't know, and this is new and this is new, I'm like, oh my God, there's no e-car in Seville. So that sometimes for me is a little bit bothering at sometimes. Um, but yeah, and then I guess also some cultural things like the time schedule, to be totally honest.
Yes.
Like, I like to go to bed early. I'm a morning person now. I've been living here 7 years. I have so much struggle getting up in the morning because everything's just so late here, and that I sometimes also miss, my German schedule.
Yes. I realized that I loved the German schedule as soon as I got out of Spain. Like it really is a funny thing, right? About Spain. It's only in Spain. They do things very, very late. And my Spanish friends think it's hilarious that like me as an American that I eat dinner at 7. And they're like, "Oh, we eat dinner at 10. Like, what? You guys are crazy." I'm like, no, you are the crazy ones. Like, nobody else in the world does this. Like, if you go right next door to France and Germany, and they're going to eat at the same time as me, so you're the weird ones. But I found out, like, living in Spain for 5 years, I realized I got used to that. That was just the way things were. And then when I got to Germany, I was like, oh my God, I'm like going to bed. Like, my body naturally fell into that. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to sleep at the quote unquote right time. I'm eating dinner at the right time. I'm waking up at the right time. This feels good.
And I mean, even having a schedule, right? So I had to get really used to it. Like, we're going to meet for lunch. And then I was like, yeah, but lunch here is like from 1 till 4. So when are we going to meet? It's like, Cara, we're going to meet at lunch, right? So, I think it got a little bit better due to the pandemic because now you actually have to do reservations at the restaurants, which wasn't the case beforehand. So it got a little bit better. At least you have to reserve a table and then you go there and you meet for a certain time. I'm always the first one, but nevertheless, at least there's some kind of half an hour time frame when you're going to meet and not 4 hours. But yeah, definitely schedule something that I really appreciate. It got a little bit better also when you have kids, because you know that when you have kids, you have to have a certain routine. Just because it's easier then to handle kids if they have a routine. But yeah, the eating at 10 at night or having lunch at 5 p.m. Still struggle.
On the flip side of that, something that I found that was getting on my nerves in Germany after living in Spain was, and I get this in the US as well, the rigidity in the schedule is like, so like if I wanted to meet up with a friend from Germany, it was like, let's pull out our phones. Let's look like 1 to 2 weeks in advance. We'll send a calendar invite for a strict 1 hour block where we're going to meet and have lunch. And like, I'm not exaggerating on any of that. It was like, you're looking like 2 weeks in advance and you're firmly scheduling it. And the Spanish way, as you just described it, was like, 30 minutes more, like, we want to meet for lunch now. Like we got 2, 3, 4 hours. We'll figure it out. Let's just go to the first place that we see right then and there. Okay. And it's like, and then you don't know how long you're going to be there. And so that got a little bit like tough for me. I was like, oh, but can we just go get lunch like now or tomorrow or meet up for drinks after work or something? But it was not really possible.
Yeah, and that's it, right? So it's probably the good balance that you want to have between the two. A little bit organized, but also not too strict.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a good balance there. One of the things that I really came to appreciate though about living in Germany, and you touched on this with like the e-car, and kind of like being ahead or behind the times a little bit, like, getting to Germany is known for being like efficient and like things work, right? But they are really ahead of the game in terms of like sustainability, environmentally friendliness, like, we kind of had like neighbors that were super annoying about recycling the trash properly, the proper receptacle for every little thing. But it was like, that's baked into the culture. Like, it was like, that is very, very serious, which is not the same in Spain for sure. So like that, the thinking about the future, putting in place like a lot of solid infrastructure that really works and supports that way of living. The restaurants, like everybody's on board with that. And that was a really kind of like nice environment to be in.
Yeah, totally. And I guess it would probably also be a huge difference between Madrid, Barcelona, maybe, I think Valencia is also, I think, the third biggest city in Spain, right? So, and I think they're also quite upfront, but Seville is like, is very, very Spanish. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Seville is like the Spanish city. I feel it's like, this is like the epitome of Spain.
It's where the Spanish Oktoberfest is. Have you been there? Or do you know about it?
No. So what is this?
It's called Feria, and it used to be a horse market, but now it became like a huge fair where you have all those little tents. So it's not like big tents like you'd have in Munich at the Oktoberfest, but it's like small tents, and they're all private. So you have to have an owner or a member of that tent to be able to actually enter the tent. And everybody's dressed up in flamenco dresses, and there's horses, and it's a really, really cool event, I have to say. And you should definitely come next year to the fair.
So is that like the like a lot of towns and cities throughout Spain have their version of the feria, but this is like the original one?
That's the original one, yeah.
Exactly. Cool. I've been to one in Cordoba, not too far from you, and in Malaga, and oddly in the town of Jaén.
So can you also dance Sevillanas? Did you see that? Or did you try it?
I cannot dance anything, much less Sevillana, but did you learn?
Yeah, so I went to a course with my mother-in-law, I think around 6 years ago. And it was quite fun because so it's like, it has 4 sets and they're all the same, and everybody dances the same dance. And it's really nice to look at, to be honest. And you have certain steps that you need to do. And we were concentrating on the steps. I think it was like a 5-week course or something like that. And we're doing like 4 weeks intense, the step here, then you turn around, then you change, da, da, da. And then the last week we came to do the hands. You know how you have to do the movement of the typical flamenco dresses with the wrists and everything. And I got so frustrated because when I joined the last week, just before, one day before the last class, a friend of mine, Spanish, said, "Cara, don't worry about the steps. The most important is the hands." I was like, oh no, why? I just learned 4 weeks of steps and now I'm just going to learn the hands now. Because the flamenco dresses are so big, so your feet are always covered. I mean, obviously you need to know when to turn around and things like that. But so I was only looking at the hands. So but it's a cool dance. It's actually quite nice to learn.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's I'm always I'm very impressed when I see people doing it, and I always feel like this is like you have to be born Spanish to be able to do this. So look at you. That's pretty amazing. Are there any I would like to get to in a moment what you guys are doing in your work, because I think that's also very applicable to the audience here. But is there anything else, like just coming from the standpoint of a expat, you know, someone who's moved abroad, raised a family abroad, you know, whether it be specific to Spain or more general, anything else like you want to share? And I ask this because like you share a lot of really good content on your LinkedIn for people who are looking to move abroad, looking to move to Spain. So I've loved a lot of that, and we'll link to your LinkedIn in the show notes so people can follow along. But I just wanted to make sure I asked, like we've talked about quite a bit, but is there anything that we kind of missed that you would want to pass along to people?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I started sharing things on moving abroad on LinkedIn, and a couple of people came up and asked me if I could give them some advice and things like that. And I think one important thing I always say, it's because a lot of Germans think, oh, I moved to Spain and everything's perfect. Well, it's not. And I think we already talked about the differences. And it's also different when you go there for a holiday than if you actually live and work there. So would definitely recommend, if they have the opportunity to do it, is live there for maybe a couple of months, 3 to 4 months, before you actually start to make the decision, or do the big move, because it's a lot different, right? You have to get your own balance between work and private life. You're not there on holiday, you're going to be there in your routine. And I think that's some advice I would definitely give to somebody who's looking to move to Spain. Go there for a couple of months, see also which neighborhood you would like, what your work would look like. Can you maybe work for your German employer, or whatever it is, or for your American employer in Spain? You have to look for a new job. So I think that's definitely one advice I always give.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I've kind of found actually, like someone actually just asked me this yesterday. They said, how long does it take for you to feel settled in a new place? And I think it's almost a year for like, and that seems like a really long time. Like for a lot of people, when you tell them like, you're going to get, I know the first time I came to Spain, I've got 3 months. That was like an eternity in my mind. Like I've got all the time in the world. But now, like I've really recognized, like I ended up being in Germany this time for 10 months, I think. And it was just about the time that I was leaving that I was like starting to make real friends, like starting to like have plans to go meet up with people, and like feeling settled in my social activities, knowing where things were, getting a little bit comfortable with the language. Like that stuff takes time. And so, giving yourself that time and understanding that first year might feel a little rough at times, but if you're committed to it and you know that going in, I think that can be a helpful vantage point to have stepping into it.
Yeah, totally. And I felt the same when I lived in New Zealand. So the plan was to stay there a year, and I then prolonged to a year and a half and finished school there. And just when I had to go, like after 1.5 years, I was like, oh no, now I really feel home here. I have my friends, I have my hockey club, I have my back then boyfriend. I know where everything is. I know where my favorite cafe is. I would know what I'd like to live. So yeah, it definitely takes time. But then I think it also goes back again to what we said before. Nothing is for permanent reason, right? Or for how do you say, forever?
Yeah, nothing is forever.
You're flexible to move around, but yeah, I feel like a lot of people are so unhappy with Germany that they just want to go, but then they maybe go a little bit unplanned and don't really know, hey, it's not the same when you go on holiday and then you actually live there.
Yeah, totally agree. I can't tell you how many people said to me in Germany, like my plan wasn't to go there. I planned to go for 3 months, ended up extending to 10 months for like a variety of reasons. A lot of it had to do with like visa stuff actually, but I was also enjoying my time there very much. Like I had everything there in Freiburg that I didn't have in Valencia. Starting with some of the things that we talked about, some of the annoyances that we were having with Spain was like fixed by going to Germany and getting the opposite of that. Another one was like we were there living in Freiburg, which is like the Schwarzwald, like beautiful forest and mountains and green. I always joke like I missed green living in Valencia, and like we had lots of green all around us. But I had so many people in Germany be like verbatim just say like, what? you moved from Spain to Germany. We always go in the other direction. Germans go to Spain. And what are you doing here? Like, what's wrong with you? I was like, it's beautiful here. You got a lot going for you. Stop.
Yeah, it's you never appreciate what you have, right, until you don't have it. So
that's it. Yeah, that's totally it. Well, it's a slight transition, but I am very curious because you talk about like, going and spending these 3 months in places and, getting a feel for a place, and now something that's so accessible to all of us that have remote work, location independence. A lot of people that listen to this show are either aspiring to have that or have that already. And you guys, I'll let you kind of introduce where you work and what you do, but you guys are making workations happen, which is like one of my favorite words in the world now. So having returned from just a workation myself, I'm a big fan of this. So yeah, can you shed some light on this aspect of your life as well?
yeah, sure. So I work in a startup which is called WorkFlex. And we do actually more than workation by now, but I'm going to focus on the workation part and tell you also then what we do. So what we have is a tool that supports employers to manage what you so-called workations or temporary work from abroad, because it has some compliance risks to it. So it's not so easy to implement such a benefit as an employer. It's possible, but it's not so easy. And yeah, we are around 1.5 years old by now, have over 100 clients, quite some big clients, well-known clients as well, well-known logos. And yeah, so it's a big topic at the moment, workations. We don't like to call it workations because sometimes we think people think that's just like, I go to the beach and take my laptop, but I don't actually work. And it actually has a lot to do also with situations like you and I have. I'm going to visit my family that lives abroad. So you, for example, going to the US or visiting your friends in Germany. So yeah, that's mainly what we do, enable workations for hopefully many, many employers.
What else are you guys doing? Because that's like if that is one part of it. And actually, let me explain real quickly for someone like why, if they're wondering like why is this a thing? Like you can't just take your laptop and go. Like we don't need to go too deep into it on this show, but like essentially there are compliance issues. If I, for example, am a U.S. employee, but I'm working in Spain, like, well, what happens? What happens if I get hurt while in Spain? Who's responsible? Should my U.S. company be paying taxes in Spain or in the US, and how do we divide the percentage up? And so this is a big topic of conversation in the future of work movement right now, and something you guys are obviously trying to solve.
Yeah, exactly. So you just pretty much summed it up quite well. So there's a different compliance risk. So what could happen, worst case, is that, for example, let's say I go abroad. I have my payroll in Spain, but I go to Germany, and the worst thing that could happen is, for example, that I create a permanent establishment for my employer. So they would really have to set up an establishment in Germany just for one employee. And there's other risks like social security, labor law, wage tax, visa and immigration. So very unsexy topics. And the issue is that mainly this topic lies with an HR or people manager who would like to allow their employees to go abroad. And that's why usually you would need some kind of experts who help with that. So we have an entire compliance team, and I mean, the leader of the compliance team, Peter. He's the main expert there, and yeah, that's mainly the reason. So that it has some restrictions also to it. You have to assess the compliance risk. You have to have certain documents to actually make it an enjoyable benefit.
So the reason I think this is relevant to bring up here, there's various reasons, but a lot of people who are listening to the show will write in and say something like, hey, I know we can make remote work at our company, but my employer thinks not for various reasons. This is one of those reasons, compliance. And so I think it's really interesting to if your dream is to live abroad and this is what's been prohibiting you, you have a viable option here. We'll put the link to the webpage in the show notes so you can go and learn more and share that. But I think it is very, very much so like one of those cutting edge topics that once we get some of this solved, then it opens up the door for people to have that chance to move abroad, whether it be for 1 month, 3 months, a year, or lifetime. Like these are the kinds of things we have to solve. So I love that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess it also has to, it has some kind of cultural change to some companies, right? So I mean, at Doist, you're probably also very flexible. I mean, you work for Doist and you live in Spain, but there's still other employers. I think what came to my biggest surprise was Adidas, for example. Really cool logo, really cool brand. Well, they only allow people to work 10 days from abroad, right? They have a really office-driven culture still. So there is still some work to do within the German, you call them Mittelstand, of that cultural change, and they'll need some time. But to become a competitive employer, there's no way around it. You'll have to have a look at it, because it's one of the most important benefits to employees, to workers, flexibility, work at my hours. I want to work in the country or in the place I want to work. So yeah, as you say, it's definitely a very relevant topic.
Yeah, I've seen that there's some statistics that show that people value this ability as much as a 7% raise. So like, imagine whatever your salary is, and someone said, hey, you can either have a 7% raise, or you can be able to do workstations, work from wherever you want. We have that system in place to allow that. About 50% of the people you ask would choose the workstation flexibility. So like, that's pretty huge. It's important to take this seriously. So, for employers out there listening, you know where to go. And for the employees wishing for the location independence, you also know where to go. Cara, this has been awesome.
Are you allowed to do workations at Doist?
Yes. Yeah. We are completely, maybe too flexible on allowing this sort of thing, but we do allow it.
Great.
Yeah, it's kind of baked into our way of working. But I think the big thing is, like, we've been doing this at Doist. We're a little bit weird because we've been doing this for a long time, so we've had the systems in place and evolve for 15 years, whereas like a lot of companies are going from completely office space to, okay, we're completely remote. And now our employees on top of that don't just want to not come into the office. They also want to go abroad and work. And so they've got a lot of things to figure out.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Cara, this has been awesome. I loved going back and forth a little bit on Spain and Germany and hearing some of your perspectives. Of course, love the naughty word workation, and what you guys are doing there. So just appreciate you sharing your time and experiences. And while people are listening, again, we'll put these links in the show notes, but where can people go to learn more about you, learn more about what you guys are doing professionally, all the above?
Yeah, so certainly LinkedIn. So just look up Cara Benecke, my name, or click on the link in the show notes. Happy also, if anybody who has questions, you can just reach out. Feel free to write a message. And then for WorkFlex would be getworkflex.com, where you can find more information around that topic. Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. Look forward to chatting again soon. Enjoy your holidays and sunny Spain.
Perfect.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.